In October of this year, the EOA will convene their 7th annual conference, Assessing Our Success, Meeting Our Global Challenges. One of the primary roles of many ethics offices is to maintain a place where employees can go to raise questions and concerns. Depending on the organization, many companies implement some kind of a 1-800 number that is answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At Nortel Networks, we implemented an alert line in the early 1990s. What do you think of when I say alert line? Well, if you're like a lot of employees, you probably think, oh my goodness, I've just seen someone do something wrong. Alert, alert. The majority of the calls that we received during that time were reports of wrongdoing, fraud, theft, and conflict of interest. The alert line was also hardly used. Our employees had a different name for alert line. They called it Rat on Your Friend line or the Snitch line. When we rolled out our new code of conduct in 1995, we decided to change the name Alert Line to Advice Line. We rolled out this service globally. We offered it to all of our employees at all of our locations, and they had the ability to call, speak in their own language, and raise issues and concerns. In other words, instead of asking them to report on others, we stressed that we wanted to offer advice and counsel. We saw a dramatic change in the types of calls that we received. Our call volume went from less than 300 calls a year to over 2,000 calls. Although employees still picked up the phone when they thought that something wasn't right, more often than not, they picked up the phone to ask for help in solving an ethical dilemma. Although a helpline or advice line is critical in giving employees a voice, a successful ethics office needs to go beyond this and to begin to measure overall corporate compliance. One such assessment process is PricewaterhouseCoopers' recently developed reputation assurance services. Warren Buffett once said, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it." Incidents of sweatshop labor, oil spills, and questionable ethics can seriously tarnish an intangible but very real corporate asset, the value of a good name. Reputation assurance helps to measure the financial impact of corporate responsibility and citizenship initiatives. At Nortel Networks Brazil, we used reputation assurance to measure our reputation in the marketplace. We gathered information from customers and employees and the Brazilian communities where we did business. We then used this tool to help us identify our strengths and weaknesses. For example, we measured the importance of our commitment to the environment by noting the value that various stakeholders placed on this issue. Our commitment to the environment was something that our customers, our employees, and the communities really valued. We didn't even realize how much until our customers told us that our recycling commitment gave us a competitive advantage and enhanced our reputation. In his book, Waltzing with the Raptors, Glenn Peters of PricewaterhouseCoopers says, "Companies cannot look to external regulation as a guide to their codes of conduct. Regulation is cumbersome and expensive to implement and has been shown to inhibit growth and prosperity. The best answer for companies that want to build sustainable reputations must lie in self-assessment." Companies have to take responsibility for safeguarding reputation by developing management processes which assure their stakeholders that they don't indulge in corrupt practices, they have respect for the environment, their products are safe, and they make a fair contribution back into society in proportion to the values which they extract. Glenn goes on to say that he believes that what total quality movement accomplished in the 1980s could be applied with similar effectiveness in the development of these processes in the coming years. In Counting What Counts, Turning Corporate Accountability to Competitive Advantage, Bill Burchard and Mark Epstein note that the rewards from building the accountable organization are a lot like those from building a quality organization. The more committed, the more benefit. From this discussion, we've seen that we all have basic human values, and this can help us create shared organizational values. By determining your organization's objectives, you can begin to create a global ethics program. Key to the success of your program will be the development of a global code of business conduct, a mechanism for raising questions and concerns, and training awareness. The last critical piece will be ongoing monitoring and self-assessment. In closing, I want to highlight the issues that you, as managers in this changing world, will likely face in the next millennium. I've spoken with managers all over the world, and their issues are relatively similar. Bribery and corruption is the most cited. The negative impact of corruption on economic development is substantial. Ram Gandhi, president of the Indian Merchants Chamber, estimates that if India were almost free from corruption by the year 2010, the average Indian family would earn 22% more than if corruption stays at its current level. Such a scenario would enable 125 million Indians to escape destitution. Transparency International, a global non-government agency based in Berlin, says, corruption is one of the greatest challenges of the contemporary world. It undermines good government. It fundamentally distorts public policy. It leads to a misallocation of resources. It harms the private sector and private sector development, and it particularly hurts the poor. More and more non-government agencies are looking to businesses to help solve these fundamental issues. In a recent study conducted by Professor George Enderle at the University of Notre Dame, he found that non-government organizations have come to expect that there will be standards around specific company activities. These include global competition, economic and human development, laws and regulations, equity and diversity, work, environment, and bribery and corruption. NGOs expect businesses to take a proactive role in each of these areas. Other issues raised by managers include human rights, child and enforced labor, and country-specific laws. Country-specific laws are an especially problematic issue. All companies say that they will obey the laws of the host country as well as the laws from their own home country. But what happens when these laws conflict? Many countries have different laws. In the U.S., the United States passed the Helms-Burton Act. This act specifically forbid trade by multinationals doing business in the U.S. to do business in Cuba. In response to the passing of this act, the Canadian government passed a law saying it was illegal for any Canadian company doing business in the United States to obey the Helms-Burton Act. So, what do companies do when faced with conflicting laws? I can tell you what one U.S.-based multinational did when recently faced with such a dilemma. Unicol, a U.S.-based multinational, had significant dealings in Burma, now Myanmar. When the U.S. government passed a law stating that the U.S.-based companies could not initiate any new business in Burma because of the reports of extensive human rights abuses, Unicol decided to leave the United States. They took the company outside the boundaries of the U.S. and then stated that the law would no longer apply to them because they were not a U.S. company. They became, in effect, a transnational corporation. As more and more companies decide that they are not beholden to any kind of government or law, it will become more and more critical that chief executive officers, boards of directors, and employees set an overall ethical agenda, just as Metal Levy in Brazil has done. Metal Levy states, "Be conscious that the company does not constitute an end in itself, but that it is also an instrument to social development." That is a powerful statement. And my hope is that over the last 30 minutes, you have come to realize how critical your role is in helping organizations to be instrumental in furthering this ethical agenda. It is up to each of us in government, education, and business to take the actions that are necessary to help change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Let us continue with the question and answer session. Our first question is from Mexico. It's from the Instituto Tecnológico de León in the city of León, the state of Guanajuato, in Mexico. The question is by fax, and it says, "We talk about a crisis of values in our times. In your opinion," I'll ask both of you this, is this crisis increasing or decreasing? What do you see happening in the next millennium? Is there a trend emerging?" Dr. Hudgins, why don't you start?
Yes, I think we do have a crisis of values. I think it has been increasing in the last few years. However, I think that in the future the potential with the global market is for the situation to improve if private institutions and organizations discuss the issues, make a point that we need a non-politicized, free set of institutions and arrangements internationally. But we're right on the precipice, and I'm not sure which way we're going to go.
Ms. Berry, what do you say?
Well, the good news, as I spoke about, is that we do have a common set of shared human values. Because we all share those values, I think we can avoid the oncoming crisis, which I do think that we are facing. Because one individual now, with the advent of the technology, can have a global impact with one unethical decision. The one example that I'm thinking of course, is the Barings Bank example, where one individual trader was able to bring down an entire corporation. As a corporation, then, you must be very, very concerned because that individual exists somewhere today in your corporation. You must be very proactive through education, training, and a lot of the examples that I gave on having an opportunity to monitor and help those individuals.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mexico. It is from the Instituto Politécnico Nacional de Educación Continua en el Distrito Federal de México.
Thank you very much. The Polytechnical National Institute, through the Continuous Education School, sends you greetings. The question is, in the free market system, what are the ethical characteristics or features that a company has to have within a progressive society? Thank you.
Ms. Berry.
In a free market system, it is a corporation's responsibility to set up and maintain some kind of proactive accountability. Accountability through monitoring and assessing the effectiveness of the programs that they have implemented in their companies. In a free market system, having that piece of regulation will help the company to assess and evaluate continually where it is on the ethical continuum.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mexico. It is from El Centro Universitario de Tijuana, in the city of Tijuana, the state of Baja California, in Mexico.
Good morning. How can you have all the members of an organization really incorporate the ethical code to their own beliefs when you have an external code of ethics that is imposed on the person, and how can Latin American organizations develop a program, an ethics program that is not too long and that will enable them to enter at a faster pace into the global economy?
Codes of conduct within organizations are oftentimes put together by the employees who make up those corporations. That is a critical success factor if you are going to have a code of conduct, as you said, that the employees of the corporation believe in. Employees who have to come to work every day and check their ethics at the door and adhere to a different kind of business conduct or business ethics cannot function successfully in an organization. You can have a code of business conduct that is developed internally by your employees with the leadership of senior management guiding that, and you can roll that out throughout your companies and organizations, and through training, develop a presence that will enable the employees of those organizations to understand exactly what is expected of them.
Our next question is from Panama. It is from La Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá in Panama City, Panama.
A warm greeting from the bridge of the world and the heart of the universe. The question is, there are many enterprises, companies that have gathered to do their self-regulation. Are there any companies that have actually organized themselves to self-regulate themselves as far as ethics?
Ms. Berry?
Yes, there are. In fact, there are several examples recently in the apparel industry. For those of you who might be familiar with the apparel industry, there has been a recent rash of publicity around some of the working conditions and the use of child labor. One of the things that the apparel manufacturers have done is they have gotten together and agreed to adhere to a set of guidelines that they have put into place. That, in effect, then hopefully will keep the government, which will make Dr. Hudgins happy, out of their backyard. And by self-regulating, then, they can address these particular issues.
Thank you. Our next question is also from Mexico. It is from the Instituto Tecnológico de Zacatepec in the state of Morelos in Mexico.
Good morning. Greetings from our institute, Technological Institute. And the question is, in the case of companies that sell articles via TV in Mexico, how can we do, as a consumer, how can we have them comply and fulfill ethical rules and codes of conduct? Because in the case of California Net, some of those products are not complying any of those codes of ethic.
Ms. Berry?
With the Internet, and I think what Dr. Hudgins said earlier about the concept of caveat emptor and buyer beware, that is a very important concept. One of the critical stakeholders that companies have are the customers that they do business with. When you violate the fundamental trust of the consumer by delivering either a product that does not meet expectations, or an inferior product, or a product that is priced too high, the consumer will react to that. And ultimately, that particular stakeholder will impact the company's ability to do business.
Dr. Hudgins, do you agree?
I agree. One of the few legitimate functions of government is to prevent fraud. In other words, if somebody sells me a pen and the pen doesn't work, they have stolen my property. They have taken my money, and I have not gotten what I expected. In terms of selling, yes, I think the information revolution really is going to help, because customers can get information about whether products are good or not, which products are the best, and in that way be more knowledgeable and purchase only the best products. This will drive bad businesses out of business.
Thank you. The next question is from Mexico. It's from La Universidad de Sonora in the city of Hermosillo in the state of Sonora in Mexico.
Good morning. A greeting from the University of Sonora Continuous Education Center. Congratulations to Dr. Hudgins and Ms. Berry for your wonderful presentations. We have a comment with regard to the importance of in this very complex dynamics that we have in our current modern life, the importance that the ethics code has. And we know that this is a code that has a great impact and relevance even for governments. In case of Sonora, for example, that we already have a program that is being implemented which involves both teachers, entrepreneurs, and just citizens in our society to apply and implement all these values, ethical values, in their actions. And where we have always had the problem that because we have always set these values aside, thinking that they have nothing to do with our business, and in order to obtain material goals and material gains, and we don't involve our values to that. So we have made a division. So what are the things that you recommend? What guidelines would you suggest for us to combine the organizational development and the code of ethics and our values? How can we bring those two together?
Dr. Hudgins?
I'll say a first thing. What we have discovered is that the ethical infrastructure of a country is very crucial to its economic development. This is why, for example, Russia is having such problems. They have entrepreneurs in Russia, they have resources in Russia, and they have more liberty than they had under the communist regime in Russia. But what they don't have, among other things, is the rule of law, and they do not have the ethical infrastructure. So I think just the recognition that good ethics is good business is a very important start.
Ms. Berry?
The comments from your organization are excellent, and I'm very pleased to hear that there are groups that are getting together at a community-based level to form codes of conduct and values for those communities. I think one of the things that I would like to see happen, and some of this work is being done right now in the United States, is to address the political systems. Many political systems suffer from a severe lack of ethics, and if we can impact those systems with codes of ethics, for example, in the United States at some of the community level elections, the people who are running for the election are being asked to sign up and agree to a code of ethics. They are then held to that by not only the voters, but everyone else who is watching the election to make sure that, first of all, they don't engage in particular dirty politics with bad advertising, etc. And I think these kinds of inroads at a very basic community level can help to put fundamental values back to where we need it, which is in the communities.
Our next question is from Sanyo de Norte America, Sanyo of North America, in the city of Tijuana in Baja California, Mexico.
Good morning. Greetings from Sanyo, and our question is the following. Why is it more difficult to establish an ethics code in a civil society, different from the ethics codes of the military, in this case, the Navy?
Part of that question got cut off. It sounds like comparing civil and a military situation and codes of ethics in those two areas. Go ahead.
Why? Go ahead.
Well, for one thing, in the military, it is, after all, the military, meaning that if I'm a soldier and I don't obey orders, they can take me away, arrest me, throw me in the stockade. I don't think the military, I believe, should act ethically, and I am very much in favor of codes of conduct in the military. This is where they're really needed. But I don't think that in a free society you can impose those kinds of codes from above on the populace. I think you have to work more at the grassroots level, as Ms. Berry was discussing.
I would agree with Dr. Hudgins. The military model would not be one that I would say is the best model, especially when trying to implement codes of business conduct in an organization or a corporation or at a community level. As Dr. Hudgins pointed out, militaries are very much a command and control type of organizations, which doesn't really leave a lot of room for individuality.
Our next question is from Colombia. It's from the Federación Nacional de Comerciantes in Medellín, in the country of Colombia, and it is, what types of educational programs exist dealing with these ethics, codes, and responsibility considerations?
In the last few years, there has been what I would call a glut of new opportunities around the business of ethics. There are many corporations out there. The corporation that I am particularly associated with right now, PricewaterhouseCoopers, as I mentioned, has a particular product that talks about reputation and looking at your stakeholders. There are other organizations, the Ethics Officer Association, which is a not-for-profit organization where you, as a business person or a university person, can belong and get information about how to implement ethics in your organizations.
Dr. Hudgins?
No, I think that those are very good points. I just come back to the issue that, remember, when you talk about ethics, you're not just talking about words on a paper and codes. You're talking about something internally. When I talk about my ethos, I'm talking about my priorities of values, my ways of operation, the way I deal with people on a routine basis. And those are the things that ultimately you have to inculcate into the citizens of a society if a free society is to operate.
Thank you for your excellent questions, but we've run out of time. Thank you again, Dr. Hudgins, Ms. Berry. We hope that you've enjoyed participating in the video conference. We will continue transmitting programs on the latest in negotiation and dispute resolution and global competitiveness. We invite you to participate in our next program on September 30, 1999, entitled Visioning Through Scenarios and Intuition, an Essential Strategy for Organizational Success. For additional information on the International Training Center's programs for this coming year, please consult your participants' manual, where you will find the dates and specific topics for each program. Also, if you are interested in participating in training programs which will be offered by the International Training Center, please contact the Center by letter, phone, fax, or email. On behalf of all of us who collaborate with the International Training Center, I thank you for your participation and interest in today's program. Thank you, and see you again soon.